Hello everyone, this is Jeff Murrin coming to you today from under a nice shade tree on the campus of Southern Methodist University, otherwise more commonly known as SMU here in Dallas, Texas. I want to continue our conversation of the Odyssey, specifically the Robert Fagle's translation of the book, and today we are going to look at Book 8, which is titled A Day for Songs and Contests. We will see competition between the people of Phaeacia with requests of participation of Odysseus himself. We will hear a bard named Demodocus singing songs, specifically songs that hit really close to home for Odysseus and have an emotional effect on him, and the promise that he will get home and how they're going to do that. And we will also hear, we'll see how he works out things, Odysseus works out things with some of the people of Phaeacia that he may have clashed with. Remember, they're kind of salty people, and we see that come into play with one in particular. And so let's go ahead and take a look at this. I'm going to read some passages and give you my commentary as we go. All right, so I'm going to start from the very beginning, which is on page 191. It says, "When dawn with a rose-red fingers shone once more, royal Alcinous, hallowed island king, rose from bed, and great Odysseus, raider of cities, rose too. Poised in his majesty, as Alcinous led the way to Phaeacia's meeting grounds, built for all beside the harbored ships. Both men sat down on the polished stone benches side by side." That's kind of interesting. They are side by side. He's the king, and this is not an elevated position for him, where Odysseus, the stranger, is lower. They are on the same level. I find that to be very interesting. It says, as Athena started roaming up and down the town in build and voice, the wise Alcinous's herald, furthering plans for Odysseus's journey home. So she's actually, again, taking on the aspect or the persona of the herald, the one who says, hear ye, hear ye. That's what a herald is, okay? And going around to try to get people together to start moving things in the direction they need to go for Odysseus, all right? And so it says, she stopped beside each citizen and urged them all, "Come this way, you lords and captains of Phaeacia. Come to the meeting grounds and learn about the stranger. Learn about him, okay? This is somebody who's new. You are a far-flung island people. Who is this person? How did a person get here? You need to know who this person is that you're going to help out. A new arrival here at our wise king's palace now. He's here from roving ocean, driven far off course. He looks like a deathless god." Ooh, okay. Now, he's going to look even more like a deathless god here in just a second. Just a few lines later than that, around line 21 or 20, it says, "Over Odysseus' head and shoulders now, Athena lavished a marvelous splendor, yes, making him taller, more massive to all eyes, so Phaeacians might regard the man with kindness, awe, and respect, as well as he might win through the many trials they pose to test the hero's strength." All right, so he's already been made bigger and had his long hair going down, flowing like hyacinth and all that kind of stuff from before he actually went out to, or when he was dealing with Nausicaa, when he first was discovered there. Now he's even bigger on top of that, so that, if anything happens in this contest, well, he's going to prove himself as somebody worthy of their time, their efforts, okay? Because this is a very manly, macho, masculine time period, culture, and especially this one on the island, where that strength, that brawn, is what's going to rule out over anything else. And so just below that, a couple lines after that, Alcinous says, "Hear me, lords and captains of Phaeacia. Hear what the heart inside me has to say. This stranger here, our guest, I don't know who he is or where he comes from, okay, or whether he comes from sunrise lands or the western lands of evening. But he has come with his wanderings to my palace. He pleads for passage. He begs we guarantee it. So now, as in years gone by, let us press on and grant him escort. No one, I tell you, no one who comes to my house will languish long here, heartsick for a convoy home." We will take care of people. We are the sea people. We know how to get from place to place. No one who is washed up here, no one who comes here and wants a ride home, if you will, is going to have to sit around and wait for it. All right? This is what we do, and we're going to offer those services that we can. All right? On the next page, 193, okay, just that little section underlined 70, it says, "In came the herald now." Remember, that's Athena. "Leading along the faithful bard, the muse adored above all others." True, but her gifts were mixed with good and evil both. She stripped him of sight, but gave the man the power of stirring rapturous song. Okay, now, here's something that I think is interesting. The bard, the person who's going to sing these songs that are going to have such an effect on Odysseus, is a blind musician. All right, you can think of Saint Cecilia, the patron saint of music in, you know, the Catholic, Anglo-Catholic, I believe even the Orthodox Church as well. Saint Cecilia is the patron saint of music, but she's also blind. So this is a typical thing in a lot of religious circles, to have a blind musician. My mom actually was a blind musician herself. But anyway, that's beside the point. The thing is, Homer, if he really did exist, there's a lot of, most people don't believe he actually was one particular individual. But the tale goes that he himself was a storyteller, obviously. He told these stories, and a lot of these were set to music, and that he was also blind. So a lot of people, you know, over time, when we've had discussions about this, believe that Homer wrote himself into the story as Demodocus the Bard. All right? And you will see here later on, he even writes a part where Odysseus just showers him with so much praise. It's actually kind of a funny thing, to almost like, well, you know, I'm the best, and you know who said I'm the best? Odysseus said I'm the best. Here, I'm going to just write it into the story. All right, enough of that. Anyway, let's continue on. Down at the bottom, the last two lines, it says, "The muse inspired the bard to sing the famous deeds of fighting heroes. The song whose fame had reached the skies those days, the strife between Odysseus and Achilles, Peleus' son, how once at the gods' lavish feast the captains clashed in a savage war of words, while Agamemnon, lord of armies, rejoiced at the heart that Achaea's bravest men were battling so. For this was the victory sign that Apollo prophesied at his shrine in Pytho, when Agamemnon strode across the rocky threshold, asking the oracle for advice. The start of the tidal waves of ruin tumbling down on Troy and Achaea's forces, both at once, thanks to the will of Zeus, who rules the world." So, yeah, Odysseus, they don't know who he is, but here's Demodocus coming in, the blind musician, singing these tales of Odysseus. And it goes on to say that Odysseus was so moved, he was moved to tears. And he did exactly what earlier Telemachus was said to have done, where he pulled his robe up over his face to hide the fact that he was crying over this. All right, and just to not let anyone catch on. All right, except for he's wearing blue robes in this, and Telemachus was wearing purple robes in earlier books. All right, so then, you know, Alcinous is the only person, King Alcinous is the only person who sees and takes stock of Odysseus doing this. All right, and he says around, let's say, line 116 or so, hear me, my lords and captains of Phaeacia. By now we've had our fill of food well shared, and the lyre too, our loyal friends at banquets, but now we go again and test ourselves in contests, games of every kind, so our guest can tell his friends when he reaches home how far we excel the world at boxing, wrestling, jumping, and speed of foot. So the idea is, you know, we're going to put on these games almost as a show for our guest here, so that whenever we do take him home and the people ask, well, who are these folks who were so kind to bring you here? Not only were they so kind, not only are they seafaring people, but they're also great at all of these sporting events as well. Okay, so We see on the next page, you know, the detail, all of these things that are happening, the foot race, the wrestling, the jumping, the discus, all this kind of stuff, and the winners of each, and filled with epithets, you know, this person, the, you know, mighty, or the whatever, all right? And so you can check those out yourself, but there is one person, Laodamas, all right? And Laodamas is one of these more salty characters that I believe Nausicaa was talking about, because he actually kind of challenges Odysseus a little bit, sort of like, oh, you are so good, let's see what you got, all right? This starts on page 196, all right? Let's say line 166, all right? It says, "Come, stranger sir, won't you try your hand at our contest now, if you have skill in any? It's fit and proper for you to know your sports. What greater glory attends a man while he's alive than what he wins with his racing feet and striving hands? Come and compete then. Throw your cares to the wind. It won't be long. Your journey's not far off. Your ship's already hauled down to sea. Your crew is set to sail. We already got you taken care of in getting yourself home, all right? So you know you're going to get to wherever you want. So why not, in the meantime, prove yourself in these contests," okay? Laodamas, this is Odysseus responding, says, "Laodamas, quick to the mark, Odysseus countered sharply. What do you taunt me? Why do you taunt me so with such a challenge? Pains weigh on my spirit now, not your sports. I've suffered much already, struggled hard, but here I sit amid your assembly still, starved for passage home, begging your king, begging all your people." "Oh, I knew it," Broadsea broke in, mocking him to his face. "I never took you for someone skilled in games, the kind that real men play throughout the world. Not a chance. You're some skipper, profiteers, roving the high seas in his scudding craft, reckoning up his freight with a keen eye out for home cargo, grabbing the gold he can. You're no athlete, I see that." Okay, so there was this challenge. Go ahead, see what you got from Laodamas. Then Broadsea comes in and ups it even more. So the saltiness that we saw in Laodamas is, doubled down on by Broadsea. So it's almost like Odysseus is like, "Man, what is up with you guys, all right? Especially you, Broadsea, all right?" It says, with a dark glance, wily Odysseus shot back, "Indecent talk, my friend. You're a reckless fool. I see that." Okay, kind of like, you're no athlete. I can see that. Well, you're a reckless fool. I can see that, all right? So, I love this. This is great. So, the gods don't hand out all their gifts at once. Not build and brains and flowing speech to all. All right, he's going to double down on this. Odysseus is here about line 203. He says, "Just like you, my fine, handsome friends, not even a god can improve those lovely looks of yours and but the mind inside is worthless." All right, you may look good, you may be strong, but you're dumb as a post up top. All right, or as it says in, "Oh brother, where art thou?" which is the movie that is loosely based on the Odyssey. He says, he's dumber than a bag of hammers. All right. He says at the end of that little section there, "I'll compete in your games, just watch. Your insults cut me to the quick. You rouse my fighting blood." So, he's going to take on Broadsea here. He says, "Up he sprang." This is that last section there on page 197. "Up he sprang, cloak and all, and seized a discus, huge and heavy, more weighty by far than those the Phaeacians used to hurl and test each other." So it's not just anyone, it's the heaviest of them, all right? "Wheeling around, he let loose with his great hand, and the stone whirred on, and down to the ground they went, those lords of the long oars and master mariners, cringing under the rock's onrush, soaring lightly out of his grip, flying away past all the other marks." Okay, so he threw this one that's heavier than theirs, and he threw it past everybody else, all right? Or everybody else's discus, I should say, all right? It says, "And Queen Athena, built like a man," okay, so now she says somebody else, "staked out the spot and cried with a voice of triumph, 'Even a blind man, friend, could find your mark by groping around. It's not mixed up in the crowd. It's far in front. So yeah, even a blind man, no one even has to see. It's like, well, here's everybody else's. If I just feel around all the way over here, oh, here it is. This is his. Obviously, it's his because it's so far away from everyone else's, because it went so much farther than everyone else's. Okay, so he says, Odysseus does, to kind of send the message home. Line 234 on page 198. Now go match that, you young pups, and straightway I'll hurl you another just as far, I swear, or even farther. All the rest of you, anyone with a spine and spirit, step right up and try me. Okay? You've incensed me so. At boxing, wrestling, racing, nothing daunts me. Any face in here except Laodamas himself. The man's my host. Okay? Who would fight his friends? He'd have to be good for nothing, senseless, yes, to challenge his host and come to grips in games. In a far-off land that he had cut his own legs short, but there are no others I deny or think beneath me. I'll take on the contenders gladly, test them head to head. I am no disgrace in the world of games, men compete. Okay. All right, so even on page 198, about line 233, he even says, now go match that, you young pups, and straight away I'll hurl another just as far, I swear, or even farther. Like, I'll take on anybody. I'll do this all day. All right, so I've proven myself. We're done. So, in again, on page 199, that first break there, says he finished and all stood quiet, because he goes off for a while, just, letting him have it. You can read that for yourself. All stood quiet, hushed. Only Alcinous found a way to answer. Stranger? Friend? Nothing you say among us seems ungracious. You simply want to display the gifts you were born with. Stung that a youngster marched up to you in the games, mocking, ridiculing your powers as no one would who had some sense of fit and proper speech. He was dumb to have done that. All right. But come now, hear me out. So you can tell our story to the other lords as you sit and feast in your halls someday, your own wife and your children by your side, remembering there our island prowess here. What skills great Odysseus has given us as well, down all the years from our father's days till now. And then it goes on a couple lines to say, we're champion sailors, all right? So you have obviously bested us. That kid just running his mouth was stupid to have done so, so we don't blame you for putting him in his place. But when you get home, please remind everybody that we're good people and we know what we're doing when it comes to sailing. The bard comes in and sings some more, sings a song of Ares and Aphrodite, and how Ares and Aphrodite cheated on Hephaestus. Remember Hephaestus from the Iliad? He's the god of fire, the forging god, like the god of the smiths, who made Achilles' armor, and specifically that great shield of Achilles. Okay, it sings of their background story. If you want to read that, check it out. It's an interesting one, and I think there's some important things here that you will see. Because at the very end, what happens is, okay, Ares and Aphrodite, they cheat on, well, they together make love, and Aphrodite is cheating on Hephaestus. Hephaestus is the forger god, the god of the, who makes After the bard sings some more and sings the story of Ares and Aphrodite sleeping together behind Hephaestus's back. Hephaestus is the god of fire who made the shield and armor for Achilles in the Iliad. After he gets down the end of that, everyone is starting to give gifts to Odysseus, and Broadsea and Odysseus make amends. All right, you'll see that on line 441 on page 204. It says, as for Broadsea, let him make amends man to man with his words as well as gifts. His first remarks were hardly fit to bear. All assembled and gave their own commands. Each noble sent a page to fetch his gifts. And Broadsea volunteered in turn, obliging. Great Alcinous, shining among our island people, of course, I'll make amends with our newfound friend as your request. I'll give the man this sword. It's solid bronze, and the hilt has silver studs, and the sheath around it ivory, freshly carved. Here's a gift our guest will value highly. He placed the silver-studded sword in Odysseus' hands with a burst of warm words. Farewell, stranger, sir. If any remark of mine gave you offense, may storm winds snatch it up and sweep it off. May the gods grant you safe passage home to see your wife. You've been so far from loved ones, suffered so. Tactful Odysseus answered him in kind, and a warm farewell to you, too, my friend. May the gods grant you good fortune. May you never miss this sword. This gift you give with such salutes. You've made amends in full. All right, so as bad as it was, they were able to smooth things over. The salty dog, Broadsea, and Odysseus, all right? So I think that's an important thing, all right? So he sees Odysseus as he has a bath, and there's going to be another performance by Demodocus the Bard. It says on page 206, about line 512, and he stepped from the bath, this is Odysseus, he stepped from the bath, to join the nobles at their wine, and there stood Nausicaa as he passed. Beside a column that propped the sturdy roof, she paused, endowed by the gods with all her beauty, gazing at Odysseus right before her eyes. Wonderstruck, she hailed her guest with a winning flight of words. Farewell, my friend. And when you are at home in your own land, remember me at times. Mainly to me, you owe the gift of life. You owe me your life. Subtle. Odysseus rose to the moment, deftly, gently. Nausicaa, daughter of generous King Alcinous, may Zeus the Thunderer, Hera's husband, grant it so that I travel home and see the dawn of my return. Even at home, I'll pray to you as a deathless goddess all my days to come. You saved my life, dear girl. You're right. You did. I owe you my life. So it goes on. Let's see. Odysseus says, here, Herald. He gives some meat to the herald to give to Demodocus, the bard, who, some people believe is Homer, as I mentioned earlier. Here, Herald, take this choice of cut to Demodocus, so he can eat his fill, with warm regards from a man who knows what suffering is. From all who walk the earth, our bards deserve esteem and awe. Our bards deserve esteem and awe, all right? So here is Odysseus saying that bards are the ones who tell these stories, deserve esteem and awe. All right, that's kind of like, if I were to say, teachers are superheroes. They really do the hard work that a lot of people aren't willing to do. All right, of course I'm going to say that. I'm a teacher. All right, and this, is written into here by Homer. It says, for the muse herself has taught them paths of songs. She loves the breed of harpers. All right, so they are loved by the god Muse. All right. It says, Odysseus, master of many exploits, praised the singer. All right, this is about 545. I respect you, Demodocus, more than any man alive. Surely the muse has taught you, Zeus's daughter, or god Apollo himself. How true to life, all too true, you sing the Achaeans' fate. All they did and suffered, all they soldiered through, as if you were there yourself or heard from the one who was. So you're that good. But come now, shift your ground. Sing of the wooden horse. Aha. So Odysseus is almost like, sing of the wooden horse. I think I've heard that story somewhere before. Okay. Sing of the wooden horse. Epeus built, with Athena's help, the cunning trap that good Odysseus brought one day to the heights of Troy, filled with fighting men who laid the city waste. Sing that for me, true to life as it deserves, and I will tell the world at once how freely the muse gave you the god's own gift of song. All right, and so if you want to check it out, look at that song, because it lays out a lot of the story that we haven't even heard. The story that didn't appear itself in the Iliad, all right? And that's where you find out how that worked to an extent. We hear more of it in the Aeneid, which wasn't even written by Homer, but was written by Virgil for a Roman audience. So he sings that song, line 582. It says, there he sang, Odysseus fought the grimmest fight he had ever braved, but he won through at last, thanks to Athena's superhuman power. That was the song the famous harper sang. But great Odysseus melted into tears, running down from his eyes to wet his cheeks, as a woman weeps, her arms flung around her darling husband, a man who fell in battle, fighting for town and townsmen, trying to beat the day of doom from home and children. Seeing the man go down, dying, gasping for breath, she clings for dear life, screams and shrills, but the victors, just behind her, digging spear butts into her back and shoulders, drag her off in bondage, yoked to hard labor pain, and the most heartbreaking torment wastes her cheeks. So, from Odysseus' eyes ran tears of heartbreak now. That is some epic simile. That he's crying, not as a woman cries, but as a woman who has lost her own husband and then is taken as, or kidnapped, taken as a hard laborer to work the rest of her life and toil until she's ground down and dies. That's how hard he is crying here. So as he's crying, Alcinous sees those tears. Again, he's the only one paying attention. And he's just like, what is going on with this guy? And so we see on page 209, about line, let's say 617, he says, fair is fair, speak out. Come, tell us the name they call you there at home, your mother, father, townsmen, neighbors round about. Surely no man in the world is nameless, all told. Born high, born low, as soon as he sees the light. His parents always name him once he's born. You have a name. Who are you? Why is this bothering you so? All right. This is important. This last little bit I want to read to you here. It's a little bit of foreshadowing, if I will, be so bold as to put that out there. So it's not going to come as a surprise to you when you check it out. But it's that section right after line 630. It says, true, there's an old tale I heard my father telling once. This is Alcinous. Okay, he's saying that Lord Poseidon was vexed with us because we escorted all mankind and never came to grief. He said that one day, a well-built ship of ours sailed home on a misty sea from such a convoy, the god would crush it, yes, and pile a huge mountain around about our port, so the old king foretold. And as for the god, well, he can do his worst or leave it quite undone, whatever warms his heart. All right, so remember that, okay? It's as though Poseidon, they're Poseidon's people. Poseidon said, one day you're going to help some people, and I'm not going to like it. Or you're going to help one person and I'm not going to like it. And as a result, I'm going to crush the ship that helps that person, and I'm going to wall your island around so you can't be that seafaring people anymore. And he's like, you know what? I don't know. Maybe that's true, but if that's what makes him happy, that's what makes him happy. We're still going to fulfill the duty that we are supposed to fulfill as Phaeacians. All right. That's it. There's a lot going on in this chapter. But there's some important little tidbits of information that will help us as we move forward, all right? And what we're going to see next is how, the next book is how Odysseus made Poseidon mad in the first place. What is that background story, all right? So check that out, read it for yourself, annotate it for yourself, have some original thoughts all your own about it, and then meet me back here and I will let you know my thoughts on it, all right? So until then, and as always, happy reading.